So yesterday we were going over the principles of parable teaching, or the methodology of approaching scripture using parables. And I think I wanted to just clarify what we did yesterday, that some of the things we say here are basic methods of approaching Bible study. So most people would agree, even in other churches or in the SDA church, that as we approach the Bible, we look at historical context, we look at the scriptural context. They might even look at original intent, what the author was trying to say back then, and we put it in some kind of dispensation. But if we were specifically looking at parables, we saw that parables are stories with spiritual or hidden meaning, or they're a natural story to explain a spiritual lesson. And in its basic form, a parable is a similitude or a comparison. So you're putting two things together to learn something more about something. So that's the reason why you're putting it next to something, is to compare and contrast, to find out more information. And so if we look at that as a definition of parable teaching, then really the methodology of parable teaching is compare and contrast, juxtaposition, natural to spiritual, repeat and enlarge. So that's all these here. And chiasm, because they're all basically saying the same thing. They're all basically saying compare and contrast, which is what line upon line is as well, and progression, I suppose. But these are the main this is the main methodology of approaching scripture, looking at it through parables. And these are the rules, these are the things we're looking for when we're approaching a passage or the Bible, a passage of Spirit of Prophecy or the Bible. We're going to use that as our mechanism to dissect the passage, to learn more from it. So let's look at our passage that we looked at before, and I think I just wanted to finish it off because I'll put it up here. It's CTR, and it was 236.2. So if we just turn there, 236.2, and we were breaking down this passage, and I think we came to a stumbling block at the last sentence of it. There's only 3 sentences, I think, anyway. Was it 4? 1, 2, no, I think it's 3. The bit we're going to focus on. So this was written in 1900. It's manuscript 7. I think this is the only place it's found because I think it's from the unpublished writings. And the reason we went here is because we're looking at what Ellen White says about parables. So that was our initial why we approached it. So let's just read this passage. It says, "The Lord has a work to do in our world, but he will not trust his work in the hands of people who know nothing of the Bible or of the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. The Lord presents in parables the rise and progress of the work that results from the preaching of his word, the present truth for this time. He brings before us the fashioning of a church that will stand before the world as chosen and faithful." So, looking at the paragraph then, Brother Oscar, what do you think the paragraph is about? If you were just to summarize it in 2 or 3 words, what's it about?
It's about the work that the church of God will be able to do at the end of the world.
So already he's putting things in there. But if you were to simplify it even more, he said it's about the work that the church of God is going to do at the end of the world. So if you were just to even put it down further, the work, should we say the work of God? Because it doesn't actually say end of the world, but I think we're reading it into it. The work of God?
Let's stop at that. So it's just the work of God.
The work of God. Okay, so it's about the work of God. And he then put in there that the church is going to do. But let's just say it's about the work of God. So let's put the work up this side. And so if we were to break down the first sentence, we'd put the work at this side, and then the rest of the sentence we'll put under something else at that side. So, Sister Solange, how would we break that sentence down? Oh, you're not in the passage. Who's got the passage open? Has everybody got it up there? Yeah. Yes, brother. So if you break down that first sentence, sorry, what's your name again? Philip, that's Philip. So Brother Philip, the first sentence, break it down for me. What do we learn from it? Okay, so first of all, there's a work to be done on earth. And you get that from which bit? The first part of the sentence.
It's going to be done on our work. That's the right work. And then this work, it cannot be trusted in the hands of those who have knowledge of the Bible and the experience of the kingdom of heaven. And for this work to be done, it needs the people to be trained or to be taught. Like, that's my whole work, right? Not so we need people to be taught, we need people to be cheered, to be trained in order to do that work. Based on the second phrase.
Okay, so he's saying it needs people to be taught because it says it won't be done by people who don't know the Bible or the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. So he's saying it needs people to be taught about those things so that they can do the work. Now, we don't see the word taught in there, so let's not add anything that we already know some things, and that's why we're bringing them to the passage. And I think this is where we tripped up last time. So if we just read the words on the page, what do you get from that second part? He will not trust his work in the hands of people who know nothing. So what will he do? So Brother Festus says he's going to trust the work in the hands of those who know. So let's put the work at this side. So it says, the Lord has a work to do in our world. So if we split the sentence, we'd say, the Lord has a work to do in our world. And then what are we going to call this side? So if we just go from this sentence, we might change it, but I'm just going to put for now, this is how. The work is done. Or let's actually, in this sentence, it says by whom. So I'll put by whom there. So this says God's going to trust the work to those in the hands of people who know the Bible and the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. So he's going to put it in the hands of those who, number one, know the Bible. And we got that, even that sentence with compare and contrast, because he tells us who he's not going to use and who he can't use. So by default, because of that description of who he can't use, we're going to say he's going to use the opposite. So he says he can't trust the work in those who don't know the Bible or the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. So we're saying he will trust it. I'll put trust the work. In the hands of those who know the Bible and, what should we say, understand? Who know nothing of the Bible or of the mysteries. Okay, so they know the Bible and the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. For those who just come, we're looking at CTR 236.2 and we're just going over it to understand it. So the second sentence, Sister Linda, the second sentence, what do you get from the second sentence? Where are you going to put everything in there? So the second sentence says, the Lord presents in parables the rise and progress of the work that results from the preaching of the word, the present truth for this time. Mm-hmm.
And that's part which says that work will be presented in parables,
Mm-hmm.
the rise and progress of the work. I'll put it on the other side. Oh, you wanted me to explain what it meant?
No, I want you to say where you want to put that sentence. If you want to put it on here, does it fit with that structure? Would you change anything? Where would you put the different parts of the sentence?
The right, the left side.
So where do you want me to go up to? The Lord? So we'll put here, because this, the Lord
Lord presents.
presents.
Oh, from parables you go to the other side.
Do you want to put it this side? So you want to put what here? Presents
Parables.
in parables
The rise and progress.
the rise and progress. And then what do you want me to do with the rest of it? So you're putting the Lord there. And do you want to do anything with the rest of it?
No, I don't know what to do with the other one.
You don't know what to do with the other ones? Okay, so she's stuck on the next part of the sentence. So
Work that results from the preaching.
So this is quite a long sentence, it's quite complex. I know some people have just come in, but Brother Jasper, have you got it? No, you haven't got it in front of you. It's quite hard if you haven't got it in front of you. Sister Dorothy, do you agree with what she said? Can you help her?
I'd say
So we're in the sentence, the Lord presents in parables the rise and progress of the work that results from the preaching of his word, the present truth for this time.
so. The presentation in parable is how the work is done, and then the work is
So Sister Dorothy says the presentation in parables is how the work is done,
and then the preaching of his word is the work.
and then the preaching of the word is the work. Okay, do you see that there's a cause and effect relationship in there? Can you see it? So what's the cause? What is the cause and effect in that sentence? Yeah,
Which
the brother next to you?
I think the cause is the preaching of his word, and then the effect is the rise and progress of the work.
So there's a cause, there's a preaching of the word, or the present truth for that time, and then there's an effect of that is the rise and progress of the work. Can everybody see that? Because it says, this happens as a result of this. So when you say as a result of, if you do this, this is going to happen. So if you mix these ingredients together, you're going to get this cake. So it says, the cake results from the mixing of the ingredients, or the making of the cake. So does everybody agree with what's already been written? Who doesn't agree with what we've put up there already?
Present truth.
Wait a minute, don't shout out. Put your hand up if you don't agree with what's been written already. So we're in the second sentence of this paragraph, and we're saying, how are we going to line it up with this? So you've got the work, and then you've got the work, how the work's going to be done, or by whom. So if we split this sentence up, how are we going to split it up? Because Sister Linda didn't know what to do with the second part of the sentence, and the first part of the sentence, she's put the Lord there and presents in parables the rise and progress of the work there. But if we do repeat and enlarge from the first sentence is telling us that there's a work to be done, and then it says who's going to do that work. So there's two parts to that sentence. There's a work, and there's who's going to do that work. And I think in this second sentence, we're already coming across a problem because we've got pre-knowledge. We've got pre-knowledge, and we're getting confused about the work and who does it. And part of the reason is because this is a complex subject, because you're not only doing the work, but you're part of the work. And this is this discrepancy that we see in a lot of the parables, and we'll go into it more in a minute, but I think this is the problem we're having. But let's just pick out the words in the sentence. If you don't have any pre-knowledge and you looked at this as repeat and enlarge, how are you going to diagram that sentence? Brother Jeremiah, do you have any idea? How are you going to diagram that sentence? If you're just looking at this using parable teaching techniques with repeat and enlarge, don't bring any knowledge into it. It talks about the work in the first part of the first sentence, then it talks about how it's going to be done or what it's going to look like, who's doing it. So in one sense, it's the same, because if you say this is the work and this is how it's done, when you're looking at how it's done, the work is being done. So it's kind of like, but if we split it into, there's a cake that needs to be made, and this is how we're going to make the cake. It's slightly different. This is the ingredients we need, this is the method we're going to use, and then we get this cake, and that's the work. And the difficulty comes in this next sentence now, is that this work isn't just the cake. It's telling us more about the cake, and it's saying the rise and progress of the cake. So these parables are going to detail how that cake is going to come about. And so it's kind of giving us more of a picture of what it looks like to bring it about. So now we're getting confused because we're thinking, well, is that the making of the cake, or is that what the cake looks like? But just take the word work and parallel that. So can you put the sentence up there? How would you diagram that sentence, that second sentence? Because we've got two thoughts that are going on here. We've got a work that needs to be done, and then we've got how the work's done. And the complexity is coming in now because this sentence is giving us more about that work and what it looks like, which is almost telling us how the work's going to be done. So we're getting confused. So we're now putting this parable teaching this side, but I'm not sure that's correct. So how do you want to put this sentence up there? If you split it like the first sentence with repeat and enlarge, just follow that structure and then split the sentence. Can you do it? So this side is telling us the Lord has a work to do in the world, and this first part of this sentence is talking again about the work. So let's line up the work with the work, because Sister Linda has put the work this side, but the word work is over here. So I want you to put it this side. Need some help? Who wants to help him? Put your hand up. Yes, Sister Dorothy.
So in the first part, the first part of the sentence in the paragraph, the Lord has a work to do in our world. I could say that in the second sentence, the first part, the Lord presents in parables the rise and progress of the work, is the work that the Lord has to do.
Yes. Okay, so Sister Dorothy's saying the Lord has a work to do in the world, and then the first part of the next sentence, it says the Lord presents in parables the rise and progress of that work that he has to do in the world. So it's giving us more detail about the work in the world. So where do you want to put that, Sister Dorothy? Do you want it on this? Are you happy with that structure that we have there already? So she's going to put it this side. So the Lord presents in parables the rise and progress of the work. So what she's done there is pick up the words the work, and she's saying this is the same work, this is the work of God in the world that the Lord has to do. And the parables, now it's giving us more details about where to find out what that work is. So it says, the Lord presents in parables the rise and progress of the work. So this is what we're going here for, is this parable. So the parables teach us or show us. What does the word present mean? I'm going to get rid of this over here. Sister Dorothy, what does it mean, the Lord presents? The Lord presents. If somebody presents, what does it mean? She's going to say teach. Is it always teach? Has anybody got it there in the dictionary? Presents. What's this here? Presents. Okay, so I'm going to put teach in brackets. But I could present to you with a document. So I don't have to teach you anything. I could just present. Present can mean just to give it to you. What else have you got? Has anyone got anything else? If you look up the word present. Brother Kuto, have you got it?
Being in a certain place, present, that is
Oh,
present.
that's present, yeah.
Being before the face or near, being in company with Christ. Then being now in a view or under consideration.
Being now in a view or under consideration. So try and when we look at definitions, try and look at all the things that are there and pick out the most relevant ones to this context. So
So that is the definition number 3. Being now in view or under consideration. In the present instance, facts will not warrant the conclusion. The present question must be decided on different principles. Then
present questions, that's different, isn't it? The present question is the one right now, but to present is as a verb.
the 4, now existing or being at this time, not past or future, as the present session of Congress. The court is in session.
Okay, stop there, Brother Goody. You're saying, as in the present session of Congress, that's present, in the present. This is to present. So what you need to do is look at it, and don't read me everything, just look at it and see what word would substitute in the sentence, and if it makes sense, then you can say it. So Brother Benjamin, do you have a... To set, place or introduce. To set. I think one of the things I saw was to set before. To set before. So maybe to set before is similar. To set before, to place, to introduce. Okay, so the reason we're doing that is because if you understand fully what the words mean, because how can you compare that to the next sentence if you don't really fully understand the words? You want to see if the writer is going to pick up those same words in the next sentence to see if there's repeat and enlarge going on. So we've picked out the word work, and we've got that here and here, and we've seen that there's something going on with the work there. And now we're looking at presents because we're seeing, well, what does this word presents mean? In order to understand the whole sentence fully. So presents means to set before or place or introduce. So the Lord sets before us in parables or introduces in parables or instructs, we could say instructs or teaches us, but I think that's probably more accurate. Presents in parables the rise and progress of the work. So he's showing us in the parables the rise and progress of the work he wants to do in the world. And then it says that results, so can we say that's how it comes about? Because it's a result, that progress of that work results from the preaching of his word, the present truth for this time. So I'm going to say that this side is how the work comes about, how that work rises and progresses. It results from the preaching of the word. So we're going to get rid of that. So if you've copied that down, so this is line 1. Let's put a line there. That might be helpful. And this is line 2. That results from the preaching of the word. And then we're going to say equals the present truth. So it's almost like repeat and enlarge in the sentence. It results from the preaching of the word, comma, the present truth for this time. So here we get more details about what that word is. So if we line that up with the first sentence, what is the word? Sister Sandra, what's the word? Because if you just had that bit, you'd say, well, what's the word? If you were a complete stranger to the... And you're saying, what word? What word is that? So use repeat and enlarge and go back to the first sentence. So we've lined this up with this bit. We've lined this up with this bit. So what is the word? The word is not mentioned here, but if you're going to do repeat and enlarge, it's telling us several new things. It says here, he's going to put this work in the hands of those who know these two things. And now it's telling us that this comes about from the preaching of the word. So now use compare and contrast and and parallel this sentence to this one. So what's the word? The word in this sentence is the present truth. So now I'm going to tell you, okay, there's a word and there's a present truth, which is the present truth, or a current truth for that time. So what's the current truth for that time if you go back to this sentence? So here in the first part of the sentence, you've got some people who know something. And in this part, you've got some people who are preaching something. So it's telling us here it's more than knowing it, it's preaching it. And what are they preaching here? Or what do they know here? They know the Bible and the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. So these are different ways of saying the word. We know the Bible is the word. So if we bring that pre-knowledge to us, it's saying here that it's going to result from the preaching of the Bible, which is the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, which is also the present truth for this time. So we can see from that that these equal each other. So this is this, and this is this as well. So here it's telling us that the Bible, the Word, the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven is the present truth for this time. So this is all the things that they know and they're preaching. Because we're paralleling the two sentences to show these people understand these things, and then they're going to preach these things. And it's just another way of saying those things. And that's what we're getting from this by comparing and contrasting. Because we're seeing he has a work to do, and this tells us about the work, and it's going to come about from the preaching of this. Now, a slightly different question. If we say the work is, there's a rise and progress of a work here, let's just put an example in there. So the work is to build, or maybe we should just do the next part of the sentence first to put that up there. Okay, so hold that thought. The Lord presents, so he's setting before us in parables this work that's going to come about from this. So when people do this, this work is going to rise and progress. It's going to be accomplished. Let's look at the last part of the sentence, the last part of the paragraph, sorry. And Sister Fiona, what are you going to do with this part? Have you got it? Sorry, got it in front of you. He brings before us the fashioning of a church that shall stand before the world as chosen and faithful. Now, don't start bringing into it now what you know about priests and Levites and all the details we know, because I think this is what we did last time. And carry on following the structure of the sentences we've got so far. So he's telling us about the work, and he's telling us how the work's going to be done. Now, or what it's going to look like, perhaps by whom, what it's going to look like. So how would you diagram this sentence into the structure? He brings before us the fashioning of a church that shall stand before the world as chosen and faithful. Where do you want to put it? This is the complex one. So. Okay, she came a bit late. She's trying to catch up, so I'll come back to you. Sister Jackie, you try. So she wants to put it here. He brings before us. Don't write anything yet. Fashioning of a church. Okay, so why do you want to put it there? So she's saying it results from the preaching of the word here, the work. So you're saying cause and effect. So when the word is preached, the church is formed. You're saying that's cause and effect. So if the word is preached and the church is formed, where's cause and effect in this sentence, the one we just did? So what's the cause and what's the effect in this one? Is this the cause or the effect? The preaching is what? The cause or the effect? The preaching of the word is what? The cause or the effect? It's the cause. So here, we put the cause over here, and we had the effect here. And now you're telling me, with this part, oh sorry, I think I should put a line there actually. So let's get, so you know, she wants to put fashioning of a church this side, but you just told me that the fashioning of the church, is that the cause or the effect? Okay, so this side you said the cause is preaching, so somebody's going to preach or give some message, and the effect of it is the rise and progress of a work. So this is going to accomplish the work. When they preach, the work's going to be done. So that's the cause and that's the effect. And now you're telling me, is the fashioning of the church, is it a cause or effect?
Effect.
It's the effect. So why do you want to put it this side and not that side? Do you want to change your position? And the reason you're getting confused is because you're already seeing that as the work of the church. You're already seeing that preaching is what the church does. So let me just put church this side, but you're already just, with logical, steps, you've seen that that's the cause and this is the effect. So if the church is the effect, it should go this side, shouldn't it? So it may make it easier if I use up here, we change this to not by whom so much, because you're thinking church is the people and that's by whom maybe. That's partly why you're getting confused, because I put how the work is done. Let me put what it looks like. Now, you could say what it looks like is here, because the rise and progress of the work is a description of what it looks like. So let's put this here for now, what it looks like. And that might help you to diagram the last sentence, because this is what it looks like, and this is the work. So if you parallel the sentences, you've already told me you think the church is the effect. Look at the words in the sentence. What does the first part say? He brings before us the fashioning of a church. Can you see a word in here that means brings before us?
Yeah, first line on the other side.
It should be on this side. So you want to put now, he brings before us the fashioning of a church. He brings before us fashioning of the church. So without our pre-knowledge about who the church is or the preaching or what the work is, or because we've brought all this knowledge to it, if we just follow the structure of the sentences using parable teaching, compare and contrast, we can see that the whole these three sentences are comparing and contrasting, and it's the same thought in the first part and the second part. So we're lining it up. If we do that, then it helps us to structure the whole thing without putting all our kind of getting confused over it. So you can see from cause to effect, you see this is the cause, this is the effect. And then it says, he brings before us the fashioning of a church. So on one level, that is the effect, but I'm not doing it from cause and effect, because I think you're going to get confused with that as well. Because then where do you want to put the rest of the sentence? He brings before us the fashioning of a church that shall stand before the world as chosen and faithful. This side, okay. That shall stand before the world as chosen and faithful. So I'm saying that's what that looks like. It looks like some people, because we've got people all the way through here. Because it says he will not trust the work in the hands, and we're saying those are people hands, even though it doesn't say people, does it? But he will not trust his work. Oh, it does, it's hands of people. So let's put hands of people. So we've got people mentioned here from the beginning, the hands of people. So this is all about the work, and this is all about the people on one level. So the Lord has a work to do in the world. It's going to be given to these people who know the Bible and the mysteries of the kingdom. Then he shows us that work, what it looks like, the rise and progress of it in the parables. And then he says it's going to come about by these people preaching this word. And this one then says, he brings before us. Now, we didn't do it from cause and effect. We just did it from splitting the structure of the sentences, but we can do it from the words as well. So I'm saying that presents means to set before or place or introduce something, which is the same thought as brings before. Could we see that? Can we see that presents is the same as brings before? Because if I present you something, I'm bringing it before you. And I got that from set before. Set before is similar to brings before. So let's put that one in red because that's connected to that. And then we've got the work connected to the blue. So this is the work. Now, you could argue what it looks like is this. He's presenting before us what it looks like. It's the fashioning of a church. It's the rise and progress of the work. So when we, but let's not get confused with that thought. That may be valid, but let's just follow the structure. So from this structure, Brother Dan, what is the rise and progress of the work? What is the work from this side? If you line up these words. So here it says, the parables present the rise and progress of the work. What does this bit tell us? The fashioning of a church is the work. So equals the work. Can everybody see that? Does everybody agree with that? Okay, somebody said no. Okay, Brother Rogers.
So, when we have broken this, what that sentence said, I think, into two parts,
Mm-hmm.
what allowed us to put this part to the side of the work and to put this part to the side of the whatever, because I see like it's switched around. It's supposed to be this way, but you have switched it around. So what allowed us to put this here and to put this section here?
Okay, so you think we've switched these two around. You think that should be that side and that should be this side. Okay. Sister Solange, tell him why we did it this way. How did we do it that way? Or do you agree that we've switched it?
I think that he's correct in my opinion.
Okay, so Sister Solange is saying he's correct. Go on.
Because the cause is first and then
The cause is first and then the effect. So what's the cause?
that you put in the second line, the cause is the preaching.
So the preaching is the cause and the effect is this.
Yeah.
What's the cause and effect in here?
The effect, the cause is that we can, that they shall stand before the word, as she said.
Okay, so
This is the effect.
this is the effect.
This is the cause.
That shall stand before the world.
This cause.
This is the cause. Oh, okay, hold on. So let me, okay, let's go to causes in blue. So this is the cause. And this is the effect. So you're saying when you've got a people who are chosen and faithful, the effect will be the fashioning of a church. Do you, okay. Do you agree with that, Sister Jackie? Is that the way you put it? Did you say the cause was a people who are chosen and faithful, and the effect is the fashioning of a church?
At first, that's how I did it. But I don't understand now what's happening.
So, Sister Solange, is that shall, is that past, present, or future? It's future. So when you read the sentence, he brings before us the fashioning of a church that shall, so this is future, that will, in the future, stand before the world as chosen and faithful. So you don't see that when he's fashioning this church, it's going to stand in future as chosen and faithful, so once it's finished. You don't see it that way around. So isn't that the cause and that's the effect then? So this is the effect, and this is the cause. And I think the reason why she said it the other way, why did you say it the other way then? Is because in the back of her mind, she's got the idea that you have to have a chosen faithful people to build a church, to bring other people into it, whatever that looks like. So I think we're bringing pre-knowledge into it to say, to put the cause and effect around a different way. And I think it's not wrong what you're saying, because each of us have this model that there's going to be a group of people who are chosen first. Because we know about priests, Levites and Nethinims, we're going, there's going to be a group of priests who are chosen and faithful somehow, and then they do this work of forming this church. And that's the model we've got. So we're going, is it cause or is it effect? But if we just follow the structure of the sentence, we can see that from this modelling, and we use this sentence as our baseline, this is the cause and this is the effect. And that's what Sister Jackie was trying to do with the cause and effect. She switched it round. But now I think I'm saying it wrong, aren't I? So that's the cause and that's the effect. In this one, we have to change it slightly up here, what we're looking at, because we want to parallel what the work is. That's what we're trying to find out, because that's the subject of the sentence. That's the subject of the paragraph, is the work. So we brought those words together. The Lord presents, he brings before us. In parables, the rise and progress of the work, the fashioning of a church, because he's trying to tell us what the work is, and that's what the work is. And so we paralleled those two sentences to find out how to line it up. So we didn't do it through cause and effect, but people have got hands up. Brother Stephen. I'm going to get rid of that because I think it's confusing.
I see it, you have a church, says it brings before us the fashioning of a church, shall stand before the Lord as chosen and faithful. So you have a church that is chosen and faithful, and then you have a world where they stand before. So I'm seeing there's a church chosen and faithful that stands before the world. And with that structure, what you had was a group of people in this side and a work that they were doing in the world. So you have a group of faithful people, then you have the world and the work. So in the second part, you also had a group of people, then the work. So I'm seeing consistency if I put a church chosen and faithful and a world which they are doing, they are standing before or doing the work. So I'm seeing the church should be on this side. The church which is chosen and faithful according to that sentence, then have the world on this side.
So now Brother Stephen's picking out the fact that on this side we've got the world, and this church is going to stand before the world. And up here we saw he has a work to do in our world. So can you see now how he's lining up the world here that they're going to stand before? And this is the work that he's going to do. And the work that he's going to do is to have a people chosen and faithful who will stand before the world. And that's what he needs. And that's what the work is. So he wants to put it this side now. Do you want to put the whole thing this side?
No.
No.
The way the sentence is written, some words are, so I would say, for example, on this side I'd say, the world, and on this side I say a fashioning of a church is chosen and faithful.
So he wants to put the fashioning of the church this side. So he wants to switch that, put that side. This section of it. Let me write it underneath then. Sorry. So tell me which words you want to put from here. All of it? He brings before us the fashioning of a church.
On this side I'd say the world.
This side, the world.
The world.
So you just want me to put the world.
On this side, the fashioning of a church that is chosen and faithful.
Okay, so he wants to put fashioning of church, chosen and faithful. And then he just wants to move the world to that side. So so that's the first time we did it. So fashioning of a church, chosen and faithful. And he wants to bring us before the world. Before the world. Does that line up with these two though? Because these two are both about the work that he's going to do in the world.
So
But what's the emphasis, the work or the world? What's the key thought of the whole paragraph? Okay, so the work is the... So he's saying that they're before the world, but if this is about the work, and this is telling us about the work, does the words, the world, tell us about the work?
The
stand before the world. So now you want to put stand before the world over here. Does that tell you about the work? Stand before the world. Who said yes? Brother Rogers said yes, it does. I'm saying stand before the world tells you about the work.
Yeah.
If you were just to say that to someone, stand before the world, would they know what you're talking about?
So I'm saying the structure of the sentence repeat and then large allows you to say that stand before the world means that you are working the world. So first of all, in
So
that
what?
one,
So, okay, go. He's saying stand before the world allows you to say
no,
that-
I'm saying the structure of the paragraph.
the structure of the paragraph.
You define what stand before the world means.
Because this says he has a work to do in our world,
Yeah,
and this says stand before the world,
that stand before the world equal to a work he does in the world.
equal to a work he doesn't. So I'm saying this is stand before the world, is paralleling to do in the world. But it doesn't tell you what the work is, does it? And this side is telling us what the work is, giving us more information each time about the work, about what the work is.
So if the first two sentences that you have analyzed,
Mhm.
the first and the second, what you, first of all, when you come to this, no, the upper one, above what Steve gave,
This bit.
the one that just gave, the problem is, no, the where you are.
We're here.
Yeah. The problem is, in the first sentence, it's telling us there is a work to be done in the world. But here you have switched it to a work being done on the church. I don't know how that's switched. Because you're saying the fashioning of the church is the work described in the first sentence. But in the first sentence, we are told it's a work that is done in the world. So, if you go to
He's saying that there's a work done in the world, and I've switched it because I've put the church this side, basically.
now you're saying the work is done on the church.
The work is done on the church.
Yeah. And the first sentence says the work is done on the world. The target
No, I'm not saying the work is done on the world, on the church, sorry. I'm saying, well, I think that this sentence, what we've put here is the fashioning of a church is the work. It's not done on the church, it is the work, the fashioning. What does the word fashioning mean? Fashioning. Moulding. What's another way we could say it? In our language of parables, what model are we using? Fashioning of a church. If we were just looking at the construction. Okay, so I'm going to say fashioning is building. So this is building a church. Whatever that looks like, if we make it a real building, but we know it means more than just a real building, but this is building the church. So Brother Rogers is telling me that what I've done is say this work to do in our world is, what were you telling me?
you're saying it's being done on the church.
It's being done on the church. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the fashioning of a church, from the structure of the sentence, I'm saying he brings before us the fashioning of a church, just like he presents in parables the rise and progress of the work. So I'm saying the fashioning of a church is the rise and progress of the work. It is the work. Does everybody agree that that's the structure of the sentence? Yeah? There's some uniformity. And I know why Brother Rogers is having a problem, and hopefully it will become clear in a minute. It's because he's looking at it with all the information he already has and with the deep knowledge of what's going on. And the structure of the paragraph itself. So you don't agree with this sentence lines up with this one then?
Okay, give me time to explain myself.
Okay.
If you go to the first sentence, you're broken into two parts. I agree with the two parts.
Yes, you agree with this. The Lord has a work to do in our world.
To do in the world,
He's going to give it to these people to do it.
he's going to use a contrast to tell us that we will not use.
Yes.
But because we have compare and contrast, we can derive the information of the people he will use.
Right. So he's given us a compare and contrast about the people he will use because he's told us who he won't use.
Yeah. So, I'm saying, if I summarize the first sentence, there is a work, and there is the people who do that work.
Right. So
When you come
there's a work, there's people who do the work.
when you come to the second sentence,
Mm-hmm.
it says he presents in parables the rise and the progress of the work that result from the preaching of the word, the present truth for this time. Again, this first part now is going to give more information how he presents this, or how he places this work before us. It's in parables. Then he says, and this work comes as a result of the preaching of the word, the present truth for this time. I'm saying, though not infer directly, implicitly, there is people who do a work in that sentence, in the second part. Because preaching, the word cannot preach itself. There are people who do the preaching of his word, the present truth for this time. When you come to the sentence that we are dealing with,
So you agree with this?
yeah,
So far we've got the same thing. We've got the same thought. This is the work. That's the people that do the work. This is the work. This is how the people do the work. It's the same. It's the people doing the work, but it's more detail about how they're going to do it. They're going to preach this
so
message.
when you come to this sentence, what we want to do, we want to break it from the structure we operated from the two previous sentences.
So go over that again. So this bit he's saying, it brings before us the fashioning of a church, the fashioning of a church that shall stand before the world as chosen and faithful. Who's doing the work, and what's the work in that sentence then?
The church is,
So he's saying the church is doing the work.
yeah,
So you're saying that's this side, it's by whom it's
the
done.
people. That is in the city.
And because they're the people, but then you're saying to stand before the work that they do is to stand before the world as chosen and faithful.
Yeah.
That's their work, to stand before the world as chosen and
Then
faithful.
you need to stand because you have to, when you rule number 5, you have to define it within the context of the.
So you're saying that standing before the world means preaching, going by this,
So,
which I would agree, if you follow that sentence structure, they're going to stand before the world as chosen and faithful. What does that look like? They're going to give this message. Preach the word. No? See, it's not that straightforward. It's not that straightforward, but if you follow this structure, let's put it into practical terms. Let's use an example then. So I'm saying that the rise and progress of the work is the fashioning of a church. So this is the church. There's a structure here and the parables tell you about the rise and progress of that. So they tell you about the building of this church, the rise and progress of it. Would we agree with that the rise and progress is the fashioning? It's the same as fashioning, because fashioning implies to build something, to make it, and then rise and progress tells you about how that thing was made, the rise and progress of it. So we're going to give the history of the rise and progress of the building of this church, and then these people over here. So this is the building of it, and these people over here, it results from them doing this. So what message are they giving over here? If you want to make something, what message are they giving over here? They're giving a message that's going to result in the building of this structure. So what message are they giving to people? Don't think in terms of religion, spiritual. Just think if you're going to make something over here. Sister Fiona wants to make something, and I'm giving her a message. What message am I giving her? Sister Fiona, if you want to make... So the other night, I saw Sister Solange was here doing some cooking demo. So Sister Solange, help her out. She wants to make a pancake or what else are you doing? Cookies. So what message is Sister Solange giving you? Or what message are you giving her? If she doesn't know how to do it, she was actually, that's the wrong way around. She was the one making the cookies. But so she's making this, pretend she doesn't know what she's doing. So what message are you going to give her now? She was actually giving the message the other night though, so that's a confusing picture. But she's giving, so let's say Brother Manoah was there. He's doing the work. He's building the church, the rise and progress of this church. And she's giving, what message is she giving him?
Has to be in connection with how.
So he's making those cookies on that fire, and what message is she giving him? Because it's the result of her message he's gonna make those cookies. He's gonna build this thing. So if in simple terms, what is she giving him? Instructions. Okay, so this is the instructions. So on one level, this is the giving of the instructions. So they're giving instructions. That's their message on building this. Would you agree with that? Because what they preach here results in this, rise and progress of the work, in something being formed, done, accomplished. So they're giving instructions on the building of a church. Do we see that? Or the rise and progress of something here. And I'm saying it's the fashioning of a church. So they're giving instructions on how to fashion this church. Does everybody see that? Brother Wilson, are you shaking your head? And hopefully we can see that just from the structure. But this is more complicated than that. Because at the same time as God's showing us that, this last sentence is where we're tripping up. It's because he's giving us more than just this structure. He's showing us that the two are interconnected in some way. Because the work, we know this is what the work we've got to do. And so we're getting confused because we're thinking, well, this is the work, but this is the people that do the work, and this is the work itself in preaching the gospel message, the warning. And so the problem, the complexity we've got is that at the same time as us being the building, because we are stones in this building, so each one of us is a stone. At the same time, what are we? We're the builders. So we've got the stone and we've got the builders. And that's the reason why we're finding this so hard to do, is because we know at the back of our minds that the builders, there's some progress of this. There's different builders, there's priests, Levites and Nethinims, and he needs a group of people ready who are chosen and faithful, who are now going to go and build this church. But at the same time, as they're building the church, they're building themselves. So the priests are doing this work of giving this message, but they're also part of this. And so it's that complexity of parable teaching that we see in a lot of the parables, that we identify the individual as part of the structure doing the work, but the work itself is being done in the individual. So, and this is what we talked about scalability yesterday with the parables. So that it's dealing with the people who do the work, and that is the work. Can we see that? Does everybody see what the problem is? So the problem is he's trying to describe the work in the world, which is the fashioning of this church. He wants a group of people, he wants a body of people. But at the same time as them understanding that's the work they're doing, it's actually doing the work in them. So as you give this message, as you know the Bible and the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, you're better able to reflect his character, to become chosen and faithful, and stand before the world, and you are becoming part of his church. So we have that picture with Paul. Paul is a stone in the church, but he's bringing stones to the structure as he witnesses and evangelizes people. It's growing. And I think this is the same model, if we can conceptualize it, as what we said about sanctification. So on one level, sanctification is constant. There's this vessel that's fit for holy purpose at the beginning, and it's the same vessel at the end. So there's that inanimate object. So you start out and you're chosen here, and you commit yourself to God, and wherever we mark that 9/11 rebirth, you're a sanctified vessel now, and God's going to use you all through this history as a sanctified vessel to work for him. So there's a constant there. It just stays the same. And then there's that idea that sanctification is a growth process. So it's also a living organism that's growing. So as you do the work, you're growing, but yet at the same time you stay constant. And I think this is what's happening here, is that you're the one doing the work, and you can see that. And because that the rise and progress of the work is you doing this preaching, is you preaching the word and understanding the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, is the forming of you as an individual structure. And then as you do that and you reach out to others, they become part of that structure and it grows. And that's the building and fashioning of the church, until it finally stands as a group at the end, chosen and faithful. But at every stage, it's got chosen and faithful. So there's that. Does that help? Go on.
Okay, I find a problem.
Okay.
It's getting complicated for me. We have two groups of people doing the work. We have he brings before us, so we have a group of us whose work is to fashion the church, and then we have another group that is to stand before the world. So according to the first statement, the Lord has a work to do in our world. So the main target is the world. So I find like the group of us, we have to do away with it in this scenario according to how you are structuring how you've done it. And so you have to go for the group of people who is to do the work. The world is the church.
So the problem you're having is, so you're saying, the first part of your sentence I didn't agree with. He said, you said, the problem is, he's bringing before us the people who do the work. The fashioning of the, you said that, did you say that? That he's bringing before us the people who do the work, which is the church. Which I'm saying, you brought your pre-knowledge to that now, because you know that the people doing the work is the church, but that's not what this says. That doesn't say the people doing the work. It says he brings before us the fashioning of a church.
Okay.
He brings before us the moulding of a church. He doesn't tell us there, in that sentence, who's moulding the church. He just says he brings before us this moulding or building of a church, which is, I'm just saying, is a group of people. We know that, but just put it on a basic level. He's bringing before us the fashioning of a structure. That's what the work is. So go on.
Yeah, according to this side, we have how the work is to be done
Mhm.
by who. So according to I thought this statement or this sentence would help us realize who is doing the work. So according to this side, who is doing the work? So that is my question.
Who's doing the work here? I don't think this sentence is focusing on who is doing the work, because the sentence is a run-on. It says he brings before us the fashioning of a church, and then he's saying, he's not talking about people there, he's saying the fashioning of a church that shall stand. So what's the that there in that sentence? So don't help her. So, my sister Jane, what's the that there? He brings before us the fashioning of a church that shall stand. Who's that talking about? If you just go by the sentence, who's the that? What's it referring to, the that? So something's going to stand before the world as chosen and faithful. From that sentence, what is it? Is it a what or a who? Now you can say it's a who because you know the church is made up of people, but that sentence actually says, he brings before us the fashioning of a church. So this is the church, that is the church that's going to stand before the world. So a church will stand before the world as chosen and faithful. So now what he's doing, the church is going to stand before the world. Yes, you can put it that side if you want to, but I'm saying the reason we didn't is because we're seeing the breakdown of the structure of the sentence, which says he presents before us the rise and progress of the work, and then he tells us that he presents before us the fashioning of a church, which is the work. So his work is to fashion a church. And that church, once he's fashioned it, is going to stand before the world chosen and faithful. And that's similar to what he's saying. The Lord has a work to do in our world, and it's to make a church that's going to stand before the world faithful and chosen. And what we've done, and we put it that side because, yeah, we could have put it all this side, but we wanted to see what it looks like. And I'm saying from this side, what does it look like? More detail. And it looks like chosen and faithful. So by putting it that side, we've actually lined it up with the people. And I think that gives us more information when we do that. So now it shows us, actually, who's going to stand before the world chosen and faithful? It's these people that are doing the work. So the people themselves become the work. And that's what that's telling us. It's going into more depth about the fact that the people who do the work are the work. So does that make sense? And the reason it's complex is because you can't really separate the two. So if the difference between making a cake and having the ingredients is we've got these separate ingredients and we're going to put them all together and we're going to make this thing, this structure. And the parable falls down a little bit because we're saying, wait a minute, the structure is made up of those ingredients, which are the same people who are making the cake. So you've got people making the cake with these ingredients, they're doing a work with this stuff, and it produces this entity. And the complexity is, we are part of the cake. So we're making the ingredients, we're doing all the stuff, because the ingredients are people, we're mixing with the people, we ourselves are changing in that process, and the people are changing, and together we're making a cake. So by the time we all get to the end result, we're all standing together in a cake. And that's the problem we've got, is that we're the builders and with the building, with the ingredients and with the cake. And that's what you're coming to this with. And so you're seeing, wait a minute, there's a crossover here. And I think that's what the Lord's trying to teach us from this as well. It's very deep, this paragraph. It's actually showing you by the end of it that these are people who are chosen and faithful. Because a church as a building, if we just make it a building, can't be chosen and faithful because it's got no ability to be faithful. It's just a building, it's just a structure. But when you make it people now, they're chosen and faithful. They have to do something. They have to stand before the world in this condition. And this is the end result of this rise and progress of the work will result in this. So the parables show you, detail this work that's going to be done by the people and what it's going to look like at the end. And so in the very instructions of those parables is the ability to do the work, is the ability to produce that thing. And this is what we've got to wrestle with, really, because it's hard to wrap your brain around it that you are the builder, but you're also the building. And you are the cake, and you're the ingredients, but you're also the cake. And this is what we find. We know this concept because we've seen it in parables. So in the parable of the 10 virgins, for instance, we have the virgins and they go forth to meet the bridegroom. And then this voice at midnight says, behold, the bridegroom cometh. Who is that? When the wise and foolish are all there asleep, and we say that's the church, it's made up of wheat and tares, it's wise and foolish. And then another voice comes in and says, behold, the bridegroom cometh. Who is that voice? So there's this complexity going on, that there's a people and there's someone else who's going to now build these people, do this work, be the builder, how we conceptualize that. But they're part of the group, because we'd say those are wise virgins giving that call. And it's just like when Jeremiah's got to separate the precious and the vile, but he's part of the precious. He is part of the precious, but he's another voice. I don't know if we can think of other examples of that. I think I had a couple down here. So we've got Jeremiah, we've got Matthew 25, who gives the cry. And then in the parable that we know really well, the wheat and tares, we've got wheat and tares in the field. Who are the servants in that parable? We've got a separate entity going on there who's doing something with this wheat and tares, but he's part of it. And I think it's trying to show us that that as we do the work, as we're doing this work of preaching and teaching, we are building a structure, we're doing a work outside of ourselves. So it's doing a work in us on an individual level, but it's also doing a work on a corporate level as a church. So he wants you to be ready as an individual. It's a bit like yesterday when he talked about cells. Cells is perhaps a better way of looking at it rather than stones. So each one of us is a cell. And cells breathe, they're living organisms, they grow, they can, they can eat and drink and feed like us. And so there's this idea that they're a living structure within a bigger structure, but they're part of the body. So, and this is the church. So each one of us is a living cell. And as we function as part of that church, we're building the church, we're strengthening the body, we're contributing to the whole structure, as well as growing ourselves and improving and being more healthy, etc. And so I think that's what this is. This is why this is so complex, because it's trying to show us those two things. It's trying to show that you are the work. He wants to do a work in you. He wants to transform you into the image of Jesus, but he also wants you to be part of a bigger structure that reflects the image of Jesus as well. And that's the work you're to do. As you do that work, as you have understanding of this, you see this rise and progress, this compare and contrasting stories in the Bible. As you study them and teach them, they're doing something to you to produce the character of Christ, and they're doing something in the world to attract others to join you. So it's powerful, and I think we really need to wrap our minds around it, that that's how this here is the instructions. So over here we've got, this is the instructions they're giving. They're giving instructions on how to build this, but these are the instructions. So you can put that side as well. And so this is it's stretch our minds to understand what's going on here. So we'll come back to, because we can also see over here mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, and we can see that that's the parables from the Bible, that the parables are the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, and this is what the people understand over here who are doing the preaching. And so they understand these parables which talk about the rise and progress of this work, and the more they understand about the rise and progress of the work, the better equipped they are to do the work, because they understand more about how God operates and how he works in the world. And in that process of studying those instructions, they become much more efficient in the work that they have to do. So does anybody have any questions? Go on.
It's not a question. I'm seeing where the confusion is from. It is from the way the headings look. For example, on this side is the work, on this side is how the work is done. So it's giving us the impression that how the work being done, or how the work is done on this side, is trying to tell us that the work is from this side. For example, the work on this side is the fashioning of a church. When you come to how it's done, it will tell you how that fashioning is done. But that's not the case. What I'm seeing on this side is the effect or the result of the work that is done on this side. So instead of saying how the work is done, you should put the result of the work done on this side. So if the fashioning on this side, the result is this, I type that is standing on this side.
So he's saying that we're confused. You can see where the confusion is coming is because I think it's going back to the point that Sister over there had already made, that the fashioning of the church this side is the work, but this is the result of the work.
That should be the result of the work instead of how the fashioning is done.
So he's saying this should be the result of the work as opposed to how the fashioning is done.
Yeah.
His problem is the heading.
The heading.
Yeah.
How the work is done. And that was on purpose because it's not that straightforward to split the sentence. But I wanted to put the work this side. But I think the confusion comes in is you're saying the work the church has to do is this. No, the work the church has to do is this.
No. Yeah,
The work is this side,
The work is this side.
and then the heading makes it as if how the work on this side is. Oh, I don't know how to.
it's being done.
How the work is being done.
Yeah, the work being done on this side is this work.
Yes, that's the confusion.
Yeah,
So he's saying how the work is being done is this work.
yeah.
So what you see is there isn't really a separation between the work and the people that do the work, because the people that do the work are the work, and that's the seeming inconsistency that we're seeing, and that's what I'm trying to explain about the ingredients of the cake are the cake, and that's the problem, that's the confusion. So I was trying to separate them to make it clearer to us that that's what the fashioning of a church is, the work. But you're saying at the same time the people doing the work is the church, which they are. But the fashioning of the building of that church is the work that God's doing in the world. And the people he's using are the people who are part of that structure, and they themselves are the work in progress in that sense. So you individually are the work in progress. God's doing a work in your life, and you as part of the church structure is a work in progress. So we're waiting to an end point when we see it's chosen and faithful, but at the same time we've got to conceptualize that every step of the way it's chosen and faithful. This is the model of sanctification. So it's growing because more physical people are joining, but at every step it's a group of chosen and faithful people who are his church, which is the work he's doing in the world.
What I'm seeing on this side is the work being done on this side is standing before the work. That's the work being done on this side.
Okay, so the work before...
Yeah, but
that's,
it's different to the work being done on this side.
and why is it different?
This one is fashioning of the church, and then that church, after having been fashioned, does a work of standing before the world. So
And the reason you're saying that is because you're saying that standing before the world is the end result of what happens. But so I'm going to challenge you, and I'm going to say, is anyone standing before the world here now? And you're using that. I think she's using this as a general term that you've got separated. You've got the church and the world, and we're saying at the end somehow there's just going to be the church is going to stand faithful before the world. And I'm saying, is no one standing faithful here? Is no one standing before the world faithful here? Are you as an individual standing faithful today before the world? Now, okay, that's different from actually the work of public evangelism, because the reason we're saying that is because we're saying priests, Levites, but before we understood priests, Levites and Nethinims and this kind of progressive structure, we would all say that the church is standing before the world in every generation faithful, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
On a big level.
if it's standing means preaching to the world, then there will be a point you are preaching to the world. There's a point that if you are faithful, chosen, you are not standing before the world.
So you're saying if you're faithful and chosen, there's a point when you're not standing before the world.
Yeah, if you're standing before the world means to preach to the world.
Yeah. Which at the minute you sign up to the church and you're preaching that word, before we understood this internal, external work, okay, because we're putting our knowledge of internal and external work on it, that, you know, there's a work to be done for the church first and there's a work to be done for the world, and we're separating those two things. But I don't think that's what this paragraph is dealing with on that level. But you can make it do that. So you can say the end result is that they're chosen and faithful, and now they're ready to do a work for the world. But the way the paragraph is formed is he's saying he has a work to do in our world, and that work is to fashion a church. That's what the work is. And that work is going through all time, different generations at different times. Now there's a present truth for each time period, so it's going into more details about the fact that it's the same message on one level, but it's a present truth for that generation on another level that he's going to do that work with. But so it's giving us more information, perhaps about our time, but the general structure of it is telling us this is the work that has to be done. It's the forming of a church. And then you conceptualize when it goes before the world, it's going to call out those people to become part of the church. And we see that imagery in Daniel 2. This stone is cut out and it's just going to grow into a mountain. So it's still God's church in that sense. So even when it stands before the world chosen and faithful, other people will be coming into it, and its work isn't finished in that sense. It's still the church being formed. You see that? Go. So time's up. Let's take that. Oh, sorry, this brother was going to speak first, I think. Go on.
So I thought like we talked before, but you have finalized it, you have corrected it. So on the issue of Brother Stephen and Brother Rogers, good enough, I agree with the first part and the one you laid. And I think the concept they were using is the concept which was first used by Sister Shireen, by putting the cause on that side and the issue on that side.
Yeah.
So on his side, he's correct and he's agreeing with you that the work which is to be done on this side is that the fashioning of the church. But he said the issue is the heading. The heading, he want to mean like, if the heading is like how the work is being done, then it is meaning on this side that how the fashioning of the church is being done on this side, which is totally different.
which is this.
Yeah. On the third.
On the third one, how it's being done.
Yeah.
Does the third sentence actually tell us how it's being done? No. So it's different information. It's different than these in a way.
And that's why I want now to correct it. Because he agrees with you that, the label you put is correct. But you want to mean that if the heading is like that, then this heading will tell us how the passion of the church is being done. But that's not the case. These are two different things. The church which is model, which is passion, will stand before the world as in the first place. So I was just to give him
To comment on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's saying it's corrected now, the mistake that the church that stands before the world. In fact, probably we should put, you want to put that side. The church that's going to stand before the world is the work that's to be done. It's going to stand, you want to put it all that side.
Yeah, it's correct.
Oh, it's correct now that the church this side and the standing faithful that side. Yeah, and I think that the reason why that's important here is because these people that are chosen and faithful that are standing here, these are people, and these are people, and these are people, and this is the work these people do, and that's what it's showing us, that the people themselves who are part of this fashion, this work here, are the ones that do the work. So they're part of the work and they're the ones that do the work. Okay, so hold that thought. We're going to next class we'll get another Spirit of Prophecy quote and try and line that up under this one. Okay, brother, is it quick thought?
Yeah, I want to come to this board.
Wants to come to this board. Okay. Presents.
So when I look into this, I agree with that, with the definition said before.
So he agrees with the definition of set before. To present is to set before.
The problem comes in when you put the set before into the sentence. Like you say the Lord presents, then you put the Lord set before, then to require something now to be added. That is us. So the Lord presents something. The Lord presents before us in parables. Okay? And when you come to the other sentence, you say, He bring before us. When you go to the lead paragraph, the lead sentence, you say the Lord has a work to do in our world, but He will not. And then by contrast, by comparison, you see that He will not present that work, give that work to people who have no knowledge of the Bible. So what the opposite of it is that He will present the work to those who know the Bible. So when you come to this section now, you see us are those people who know the Bible. And then you see also us here. The Lord brings before us are those people who know the Bible. Therefore the problem, the complication or the complexity is going to be, He brings the work before us. He brings before us. This is those people who know the Bible.
Okay, stop there. So he's saying he wants to link the brings before us, set before he's saying is correct. So the Lord presents before us. He wants to put that in there to line it up with this. He presents before us in parables this, and he brings before us the fashioning of the church. But then you make a leap and you say,
I see two things.
he says that the us is these people over here.
Us and the church being fashioned before us.
So now he's putting in the fact that there's an us that's fashioned before the church. I think this is a new thought, and I think we have to close there. So if you hold that thought for the next class, but I think what you're doing is you're making the us over here, these people here, and I don't know if the structure of the sentences allows you to do that, even though that's what we understand. People see what he's doing? He's saying that the Lord has a work, the Lord presents before us, and he's putting the us in there because it says here he brings before us, and he's saying the us is these people over here. And I think that's now adding a different thought into it. So let's close and we'll come back to it in the next class. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word and the Spirit of prophecy, which is your word, which is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. We thank you for the hidden meaning in these words. We thank you that even though it's complex, you've given us a level of understanding that we can approach using parable methodology and understand more about the work in the world and us who have to do that work. Father, we pray that we would rightly divide the word of truth, that you would give us a clearer and better understanding of the present truth for this time, and that you would settle us into it so we cannot be moved, and that we'd be ready for the seal of God to be placed in our foreheads for eternity. Please be with us now through the rest of this day, and we thank you for spiritual food, and we thank you for the physical food that you have provided for us. May it give us strength and health. We thank you now, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.